Joel and Yerasimos, I am so excited to have you here on Unbroken. Yerasimos, we met at an Acapulco, and I found out about your podcast, and I was on it, and it was a privilege to meet you, Joel. And you guys are people who are actually actively doing your part to spread truth and to help change this world, which definitely needs to go in a new direction. So I'm really grateful that you've come on today, and I look forward to our chat. And I thought, for people that don't know you, if you guys could share, you're here for the Truth podcast, your course, like, what are you guys, who are you guys, and what are you guys doing?
Joel, you can start with this.
Sure, no worries. Yeah, Max, absolute honor and pleasure to be here. I loved our conversations together on Here for the Truth. And as we mentioned beforehand, like the feedback has been so deep and so immense, and so much gratitude for the openness, for the vulnerability, and also just for the journey that was really displayed. Like, people need that hope, people need that inspiration, and people definitely got it. So thanks for having us. Here for the Truth, it's a podcast of ours which was born in 2021, and it's happened very, very synchronistically. We're both fans of the Unslaved podcast, hosted by Michael Tessarian and David Whitehead. And that's something that we had in common. And in 2020, I was going to my regular day job, working in a factory, in a family business, very long drive, and I was listening to Unslaved. And the episode that I was listening to was called Awakening Somatic Intelligence, and the two guests at the time was Yerasimos and Sophie Fletcher, and they were talking about the body as the shadow, as the shadow. I never heard this concept of shadow work being done through the body up until this point, and it was something that really intrigued me and inspired me. And for one reason or another, I decided to seek Yerasimos on social media. I found him on Instagram, and I sent him a message just reflecting back to him the value that I got from that, not expecting a response, just wanting to share, because it's what I felt at the time. Yerasimos, not immediately, but I think I was on your profile, maybe watching your stories. Then you checked your stories and found me and kind of sussed me out, and then we got to connect. We spoke. We were doing a text exchange at the time. I was letting him know I was studying in Michael Tessarian's mystery school at the time. At that point in time, I was working on becoming a tarot reader and doing ancient esoteric astrology readings based on Michael's work as well. And then eventually we decided to jump on a Zoom call, Yerasimos and I, and we just clicked. We just such deep shared values from the moment that we had that energy exchange together. We both realized we wanted to start a podcast, and so we put a plan in place for the next time that we connect to just do a podcast. And so the very next time, the second time ever we spoke on Zoom, I just hit that record button, and we recorded episode 1, which was called Walking an Authentic Path. And we just vibed, and we did our thing. And every week since, we've been recording podcasts. Around episode 3, we decided to start having guests. And this was just a train that took off and, became a primary thing in our lives, both of us. And we sat together every single day for 3-4 hours, working on things, growing things, sharing ideas, evolving things, wanting to help people, wanting to inspire people. And then in 2022, we decided to take it to the next level and create our own course, our own group coaching program based on lots of the principles that we shared on our podcast in Here for the Truth. Because one of the primary concerns that that we see and that we learned in our lives, especially through Michael's work on Unslaved, is this whole notion of collectivism. So many people just get so swept up in herd ideology and in crowd think, and they spend their entire lives living such inauthentic lives, so far, so incongruent from who they truly are. And that was a problem that we really wanted to solve. So in March 2022, we launched our first round of Rise Above the Herd, and it's had an incredible impact. We just started our 9th round just now, and it's a privilege of a lifetime to do what we do, to do what I do, and to be able to dedicate my resources and my energy each day into having conversations with my heroes, with my mentors, and inspiring other individuals to be the best versions of themselves possible.
Wow, that's amazing. And I would say it was I have memory actually of pre-incarnation and knowing that I would meet certain people. I have this idea, we volunteered, we all came here to be here right now for this massive transition. I mean, this is the most incredible time to be alive in Earth's history, right? So it certainly looks to me like you two, you were gonna find each other and you were gonna start doing this work together. So yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, it's
it's re-
undeniable from my end. But yeah,
it's really a privilege, and Joel's like a brother to me, and there's so many similarities too. Of course, differences, but just similarities too when we talk about, elements of our childhood or upbringing, or we're both first generation. Me first generation Greek American in the U.S., and Joel is first generation Lebanese Palestinian in Australia, and there's some similarities there, and it's to find someone that is incredible at what he does. Like, I love Joel. He's such an amazing business partner, and we complement each other so well. And to build something that is having an impact, it's so much fun too. Like, it just lights me up every day because I love knowledge. I've always been a curious person. I love the idea of what is truth. It's challenging the status quo has been a part of my life for a very, very long time. And so, I think having so many different interests and passions as well to be able to have these conversations and to expose other people to things that they haven't been exposed to. So I feel like it's a privilege to be able to do that, and it's amazing to see how people have been receiving the podcast over the last 3 years. We, like Joel said, we just jumped on Zoom and pressed record, and then we just kept doing it, imperfect action, tweaking things as we went, building relationships, having amazing conversations, and then to see it grow, like I think in 20, well, last year we were the top 1% globally shared podcast, and we're like top 2.5% listened to, and there's always room for growth, but it's pretty incredible when like you're having a conversation like this and then you forget, oh wow, thousands of people are going to like press play and listen to it from all over the world. I forget that sometimes because we're just doing our thing. I sit on my little kneeling chair here, Joel's on his chair. We press record, we have guests like you on, we have these conversations, and then we do what we do, and we send it to the internet, and and then it's pretty cool.
yeah,
That's why it works, because you're being authentic. Speaking of authentic, you're just getting together and talking. And that I always forget too. I just show up and I talk to people, and that's what everyone is hungry for, and we learn through each other's stories more than anything else. So, the powers that be, the structured thing is, you're in a suit and you're all perfect and you look perfect, and it's scripted. I mean, I think we're moving away from that towards something just much more human.
Yeah.
And you know
Yeah, we don't edit our podcasts. Like I mean, we have a producer that supports us with making things, sound and look good, but we're not like, oh, let's cut out 5 minutes here, let's cut out 2 minutes there. Like, what happens is what happens, and we present it to the world. And anyone who watches our podcast, I roll up with my backwards cap, and it's not like, oh, I have to wear a suit and tie every day, because as we're seeing in the world, most people are disillusioned with
yeah,
mainstream institutions and establishments. People are over the news. I mean, you have a small percentage of people that are still they're hooked in, but most people are there. I mean, when you have someone like Joe Rogan have 11 million or whatever, 12 million listeners, and other people out there on YouTube that are pulling in this straw, like, people are hungry for knowledge, for information. They're seeking. I think we're in this time right now where
yeah,
that veil is dropping, and individuals are like, there has to be something more to life. All this stuff that's happening in the world can't just be happening organically. There must be some invisible hand that's guiding events and things to happen. Like, is humanity really here to just have this much strife, this much drama, this much hate, this much bloodshed and violence? No, unless there are puppeteers at the top that are guiding this, because I think most people at their core are good,
yes,
loving people. Their spirit, their soul comes out. Like, even people who I don't agree with, like, ideologically, there's times where I have conversations, and even with strangers that I meet, and I'm like, wow, I could just tell you're a lovely human being. But unfortunately, so many people don't have the education, don't have the self-awareness, maybe haven't done the healing that can support them to not have their psyches and their minds hijacked by people that want to do the hijacking.
yeah. Yeah, and I like the title of your course, Rise Above the Herd, because the herd is a really good term. And we have grown up in a culture, which the word cult is part of, and it has been designed to put us in this herd mentality, to have a hive mind that's run, like you say, by these puppeteers. I mean, if you research Mockingbird media, there's absolute proof that the media, the mainstream media, and mostly also the alt media, it was designed to propagandize, to create a false reality. So you're right. Why we don't have to live in a world full of violence and hate and division and scarcity and poverty and disease. Like all that's actually not natural and
Yeah.
and designed. So I agree. I think people are ready to take a step in and open their minds. And I think there's help. There's this light. I feel it. I don't know. I'll ask you, Joel, what you sense, but it's like the consciousness of the collective. And I mean, yeah, there are those that don't want to, their minds are in that matrix, let's call it, and they don't want to, step out of it. They're too scared. But I see a lot of awakening, and it's like the truth and the light is rushing in now, and people are more available or hungry for it.
Yeah, for sure. And there's no doubt about it in my heart and mind that like the events that proceeded from 2020 were a major catalyst for this.
Yeah.
Like this global coup that they attempted like backfired in the most beautiful way. And for me, it was always going to happen that way. But it seems like as big as a push that they tried to intake to enslave humanity, like all that did was disillusion and shatter so many people's preconceptions and ideas and attachments towards government, towards authority, towards what it means to be sovereign, etc. And this roll-on effect is just continued and it snowballs and it continues to grow. And like literally, like nothing can stop it. You know what I mean? Like nothing can stop that individual seed of consciousness that's awakened in each person to question things and to question reality. And it's just gonna continue. Like I consider my own journey like very much so a microcosm of like what might be happening on the collective, like as within, so without. And for me, it just seems like there's this huge acceleration taking place for those that are choosing to behave and act in ways that are congruent with their true nature and that align with their authentic path. Like especially for those who in the peak of the intensity and of the craziness in between 2020 and 2022, like those who in those opportune moments made those decisions, staked their flag in the ground, decided to be real, to choose an authentic path. Like I just see them, I see my colleagues all around me, like they are so much more accelerated and further up the mountain, like in 2 or 3 years than before that 10 years worth of work would have taken them. And I think it's amazing to witness, and it's a testament to the innate power that we all have, within us. Like to me, I look at the powers that pretend to be and the external forces and the social controls. I'm like, you have nothing. Like you literally have nothing.
Yeah, it's sometimes that that hardship and that pressure is actually what can push us to a higher level,
Yeah.
and it can push people to a point where they realize, okay, am I going to be courageous or am I going to fold? You
Hmm.
kind of come to this choice point. So I think ironically, you're right. Like
Yeah.
it was over, usually for decades and hundreds of years they've socially engineered very slowly, very deliberately, but they've gotten to a point, and I kind of suspect they know that this consciousness, we're leaving a dark
Mm.
age galactically and we're entering a light age, and they know this,
They
and
know
they
the
know,
gig is up. They know the
Yeah.
yeah,
gig
they
is
know
up
the
on
gig is
some
up.
level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
It
they're going
from
all out. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
from
not
from the
working.
from the moment I felt 2020, it felt like the final thrash of a snake, knowing it
Yes.
was knowing it was going to die. Like it was just so obvious. Like everything just felt so obvious and poorly, done. Like there was no discreetness about it.
Yeah. And I think too, part of like this exponential growth that maybe you're seeing in people's lives. And again, when I say exponential growth, like I don't mean just like like monetary success or worldly success, but I mean also too like what's happening in a person's life. you know, in that regards. And I think when you're faced with a certain challenge in your life, that choice point that you spoke about, and you make a more righteous decision to stand for yourself and to stand in integrity, that immediately is a self-esteem building act.
Yeah.
And everything that Joel and I talk about, and is a major crux of our program regarding self-esteem, is that, like, it's compounding. And so, of course, if you've made a really strong decision that uplifts your self-esteem, how is that then going to feed you with in regards to what comes after that? So I think, like, the pressure was so big that then the opposite, the decision is so big, and that just uplifts you to this level that I think we can see these growths that are happening in a way that maybe are more quantum, you know, than years past on some
Yeah.
level.
Yeah, for sure. And like you mentioned, Max, like the pressure is a requisite. Then there needs to be an opposing force in order for us to fully grow and to evolve. Like a diamond requires pressure. Everything great in nature is born in the dark, like in the dirt. And the entire game is that we've been sold this comfort and this convenience, which underneath it is actually quite insidious. And it prevents growth, it prevents evolution, it prevents psycho-spiritual upward movements. So on the authentic path, there's pressure, there's obstacles, you're navigating in real time. On the inauthentic path, which we've been sold and conditioned to buy into for most of our lives, everything's done for you. The highway has been pre-carved. You have public education, you go into college, you go get one of the 7, 8 jobs, acceptable jobs available to you. Every decision's made, right? And this is what stunts psychic evolution. And so for those who made those decisions, they entered onto an organic, authentic path where the soil is fertile for growth.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at cell biology, there's this
Mhm.
thing where the cell has to have some pressure to evolve. None, it doesn't evolve. Too much, it gets destroyed. So there is that kind of force that we need. And you're right, everything has been engineered in a way to kind of dumb us down and take us out of that flow of who we are. And you know, I like to reframe things, to flip them, you know. So I'm noticing even in my own life now, there's a lot of change. There's a lot of things that are ending, and and it feels a little scary, but what I'm noticing is, oh, okay, my soul, all of our souls is pushing me. It's like when certain things are ending, it's because a new beginning is coming, right?
Yeah, of course.
So I fall into it for a minute, like, oh my God, you know, and then I remember, wait a minute, you know, there's a higher part of me that's guiding me. And so things have to fall away that we might feel very comfortable in, but we're a little bit stuck in. And it feels a little anxiety provoking until you remember, wait a minute, I'm being pushed into something else, into a higher level. So growth always is somewhat uncomfortable. But what if we look at it that way, you know?
Yeah, totally. One of my, favorite philosophers, Soren Kierkegaard, talks about the relationship between anxiety and freedom. And most people want to turn away from the anxiety. They want to medicate it away. They want to numb it down. But really, that anxiety is calling you towards your freedom, right? That fear-inducing thing, whatever it is that shakes that comfort, that comfortability, that convenience. Like that's the path. Like the obstacle is the way. Is a truth to me.
So I was wondering, I just love to hear everyone's personal story. I think everyone relates to that. And so I was wondering if each of you could kind of, you know, however much you want, but what were the sort of formative moments of your life? What was your path like? And how did you get to be the men that you are today, authentic, helping others, putting out truth? Because, you know, not everyone's awake and aware. Not everyone has evolved their consciousness to the point that you guys have. So how'd you get here and get to the point to be who you are today? And whichever one of you wants to start.
Sure. I'm waiting for Joel to laugh, because I'll be like,
Nah,
is this
bro.
is this a 4-hour episode? No, I
Do your thing, man, please.
I love that you asked this question also because, Joel and I, this is what we ask our guests and our first time guests too, like, because we love the hero's journey. We love what,
Yeah.
major rites of passage people have gone to guide them to who they are. I mean, you know, s- sometimes I think like it was written, it's just in the stars. This is part of my
Yeah.
destiny, on some level. I think there's that piece to it. We're not just born into this world as a blank slate. There are things that come to us, whether it's from our lineage, astrologically, all these different factors that play into it, past lives. And I think part of, who I am is I've always been a curious person, always curious and loving knowledge and loving learning. I mean, I grew up with, two immigrant parents, that came to this country with nothing. And my father, who recently passed at almost 94 years old, a month ago, he built a life, and he lived that American dream, and was a provider and a protector to a certain degree, and allowed me to have some freedom to make my own decisions. Now, that doesn't mean there wasn't a lot of conditioning that I had to work through. You grow up in a Greek family, there's conditioning. But I think for me, it was always, even like in high school, like my last 1 or 2 years, I was just kind of like seeing the way the herd or the crowd played things out, and I got disillusioned, and I was really looking forward to just moving away and going to university. Now, university back then, 25, 26 years ago, fortunately isn't as indoctrinating as it is today. So I had a more traditional college experience, but I really enjoyed interacting with people all around the world and learning. And I studied abroad in Australia, actually. So another connection with Joel and me is I had a deep love for Australia because I spent 4 months there, my third year of university. And just like, and even there, where the seed was planted for me, that wow, you can travel for a year or two, because in the US we're not taught about like the gap years that, like, in England and Australia and other places. It's just like, go to school, go to college, and get a job. And so when I met these people that had been traveling, like, it just piqued something in me, and I set the intention. I was like, there will be one time at some point in my life where I take a year off and I travel. Anyways, I think the curiosity and the desire to travel and learn has always been with me. After college, I took all my savings and backpacked Europe for a few months, and I just read books, and I found myself into weird and crazy experiences that, like, I had to work through, because you're traveling by yourself in new lands, in new countries. And so again, these are like little mini rites of passage where you make this decision, you follow this inner call. And one of the, I think, a huge impact for me throughout my life has been, yeah, I get pressure from others, but what is that voice within? What is that little niggle that's like tapping on the door of my consciousness? That's like, no, make a left turn. No, make a right turn. Like, you're lit up by this. You're excited by this. Go after it. Yes, people may judge you. I mean, after college, I had my first post-college job, but then I was like, 22 years old. I went, this isn't for me. I want to carve my own path. And so I went on this alternative journey, um, doing a bunch of different stuff. I don't need to get into all the details, but and each thing fed the previous thing. And there were times where I had friends that were making fun of me, because I wasn't following a straight and narrow path. But there was a part of me that did not give a fuck, because deep down, I knew that, like, this was meant for me. Even the pains, even the struggles, even the things that crossed my path, even the fact that most people that grow up first generation Greek American, they like stay close to home. They take over the family business, and I'm not knocking people who made that choice. It just wasn't for me. But I had friends growing up in my community that they wanted to go away to college. They wanted to travel, but, like, they weren't allowed. And so for some reason, I'm grateful that, I mean, I think I was pretty strong and stubborn enough that I don't think I would have let it happen. But, like, my parents, there was something in them that said, okay, go spread your wings. Go have your experiences. Yes, I think some of the decisions I made in my life, they were just like, what are you doing? But it's my life. And then that doesn't even mention, like, early on, I had a lot of health issues as a child, a lot of health issues that I think, drove me. And there was something within me that was like, well, what else is out there regarding health? Because that was my initial foray into like, let's say, truth seeking, was through the health world primarily. My first acting teacher actually gave me Dr. Carrie Mullis's autobiography, Dancing Naked in the Minefield, when I was in my 24 years old. And in that book, he's challenging, the mainstream hypotheses around HIV and AIDS and even climate change. And he's going into all these things. And I was just blown away. I was like, what? I was like, so that just drove me. Then it's like, well, if these things are true and the things we're being told are lies, then what else is there? So, from then it was like that moment, like, let's just keep peeling away and not just externally, but I had such a deep desire to like know who I was. Who am I outside of the conditioning of my Greek parents and my culture and my like, society? And so, it's been this dance between external exploration of like what is true, what is out there, and also what's the truth of me and who am I and what are my gifts and what do I really value and what do I want to bring into the world. And so yeah, I mean, I don't there's been a lot of different moments in my life, hard moments, tough moments, moments of truth, but it's a lot of it's just been driven by this is my life and I'm going to make the decisions I want to make, and if I fall flat on my face, that's on me, and then I can pick myself up and I can grow from that. So some things have been easier than others. I've been blessed in some ways, and in other ways, it's been a challenge, and you have to kind of, I'll say, man up and do what needs to be done if you want the life that you want.
And how about you, Joel? You also came from immigrant parents, right?
Yeah, I did. So my dad was born in Jerusalem, Palestine. My mum was born in Lebanon, in Tripoli, and well, my dad obviously fled Jerusalem. That was just after the 6 Day War, and my mum's parents got divorced, and then a lot of his brothers, her father's brothers, were moving to Australia, so he decided to take her over as well. In a strange circumstance, they ended up both becoming Jehovah's Witnesses and meeting at a Kingdom Hall together. So, Palestinian Jehovah's Witness growing up in Sydney, Australia, was a very unique karmic blueprint for me to navigate and work through. Um, and yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of the foundation, for me to like be so inclined to stand against the crowd and the status quo and be an individual, quite paradoxically came out of my upbringing as a Jehovah's Witness. Because as a young kid, being a Jehovah's Witness in school, you're the odd one out. You're the weirdo that's not celebrating Christmas. You're the weirdo that's not celebrating birthdays. And even Jehovah's Witnesses, they call their religion the truth. So I'm walking around. I've got the truth. You don't have the truth. I know the truth. Even though obviously there's deep conditioning and programming there, in many ways that was the seed, and it always kind of just inherently felt good to like be different and to stand apart and to stand against the status quo. And I found myself very comfortable there. Astrologically, I'm a 29th degree Scorpio, so there's this deep rebellion, planted in there, I think, in my blueprint. And yeah, so I guess the other major catalyst, that set my life and my path in the way it was, that my dad became incredibly successful as pretty much as basically an immigrant. He went on to build the largest independent concrete manufacturing business in the Southern Hemisphere. And so having like seeing that influence and seeing him from a quote unquote, oppressed kind of culture go on to do what he did was very, very, very empowering. And he always fed me with that knowledge, that insight, and that empowerment that you can do whatever you want, son. Like the world is yours kind of thing. Now, the catch-22 was that you have to work within the family business. I'm doing this for you. This is for you to inherit. There's no need to think about anything. You don't need to walk your own path. You don't need to, be creative outside of this realm. Like this is yours. And that never felt good to me. Construction never felt good to me, not once in, my life. It didn't light me up, didn't excite me. And that's another part of this, is that Yerasimos and I are both generators. So, the path for generators is to follow what excites them, what lights them up, follow your bliss. And for a long time, I was butting heads in that arena, you know. And again, it's that insidious convenience, that comfort, that safety net, which we cling to. But ultimately, it breeds dysfunction and it breeds inauthenticity in our lives. So eventually, I decided, to walk away from that family business, and that was very difficult. There were many hard conversations and battles that were had to extricate myself from that system. You know, my family was very close. But ultimately, I decided to go my own way. And 2020 again was a major catalyst for that. You know, because what 2020 did was it made it very clear where people's values really lied and what they were. And there was just a dissonance in values that really forced me to shatter certain relationships and certain friendships temporarily in order to go find myself. Now, a key part of this story is that in 2015, I had my first major shift in consciousness. And, you know, I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle at that point in time. My first major relationship had ended, so there was a bit of like a dark night of the soul thing going on. And then all of a sudden, like I had this shift. I don't from where I'm sitting and standing now. I don't recommend Eckhart Tolle or The Power of Now, but it was a potent demarcation on my path, and I just had this crazy experience of samadhi or bliss for so long. It's like there was just this strange, I don't know if you want to call it detachment or awakening that occurred where like I would take the garbage out and it'll be a magical fucking experience. Like I would empty the dishwasher and there'd be so much presence, so much consciousness. Just the most simple, subtle smells I'd never smelled before in my life would just bring me to tears. And so there was something that changed. There was something that shifted. But the catch 22 again with that is that, you know, that new age kind of path, there's some things that are organic to it, but there's some things that are inorganic to it. Now, the inorganic side of it that doesn't serve a human being is that it asks you to drop your identities. It asks you to drop the past, drop the future. All that matters is the now, is the present. So there was a lot of things unresolved and undone in my life. And I ended up leading my life for a few years believing that, you know, I didn't have to do anything. Everything was done for me. I didn't have to think deeply about anything. You know, everything just is what it is. It didn't require my rationality, my reason, my will to move my life in a certain direction. And ultimately, I cast a lot of shadows in my life and left a lot of things undone and had a lot of metaphorical bonfires starting to burn because of that philosophy that was driving me. And then around 2020, 2021, there was another shattering that occurred where I was like, you know, things just aren't working out. Life does not feel good. I feel frail, like literally psychically and physically frail. I was like, something has to shift. And, you know, I kind of went through a shadow work path and I went through a period of radical honesty. And I had to really face within all the little lies and white lies and things I was tacitly avoiding in my life. And I decided to have very difficult conversations. And I really adopted a policy of having zero tolerance for the lie within and without, regardless of the outcomes, regardless of what would happen intuitively. That's what I felt had to be done. And I found so much power through this exercise because I think that frailty is incongruence. It's lying to oneself, it's avoiding oneself. But the moment you can bring yourself back into internal alignment, you know, by letting things rise to the surface, you know, being real and having that congruence within and without, then there's new power that becomes accessible to you. And so, yeah, 2021, you know, I met Yerasimos, and that's another major rite of passage in my life. And, you know, life's been a wild ride ever since.
Wow.
I can't believe it's almost a little over 3 years from when that message showed up in Instagram. You know, when you don't follow someone, it shows up in your request folder. And I like saw that message come in, and you know, it's wild 3 years later. And this just goes to show you too, for anyone listening, like you have no idea where your life will be like in 2 years, in 3 years, in 5 years. Like you have no idea. You have no idea what decision will lead to something else that then like your life will open up in a whole new way. And so, you know, meeting Joel allowed, you know, so many things that I've learned and trained in and studied, you know, to kind of come together in this way and to be presented in a certain way. And so, you know, I'm so blessed over the last, you know, couple decades of, you know, diving into psychology, you know, learning about somatics and the nervous system, studying human design, all the things I did with clients one on one. I met my wife Sophie through a little community, and you know, we have shared interests in the work that we do together. And, you know, that, talk about a rite of passage. Marriage was a rite of passage for me, you know, as someone who thought, oh, I'm never going to get married. I'm just going to travel all around the world to do my thing, you know, and I'm not saying like part of that isn't, you know, great and fun, but, you know, meeting Sophie and what did that do to me as a man, and grounded me more in a certain way and got me more, even more aligned with my mission and my purpose. And, um, Yes,
Oh
there's just
yeah.
there's so many events in life
Yeah.
that have an impact. Um, but
And
I think, yeah.
when you look back, it makes a lot of sense. You can see how those events brought you. So there were like stepping stones on a path that you were meant to do. I mean, when you were talking, Joel, it reminded me of when I got pregnant when I was 38, using birth control, right? And so I immediately knew, okay, this is something like I've got to follow this, So I married the guy and had my daughter and had a family life. She's just about 21 now. And I was like you, Joel. I was like, oh, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to get married. I was kind of indoctrinated a little bit in the feminist program for a while in the New Age, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
It totally formed a part of me that needed developing.
Hmm.
And after I had my daughter is when the vault opened for me, and a lot of the more horrific memories of the things that had happened to me just sort of burst out. And I remember one of the things that was so like powerful for me. I thought, well, who the fuck am I that I didn't remember some of this stuff? Like, how can this even be? So it shook me up so much. And then my heart was just breaking. I mean, and somatics, you're awesome. I mean, I was just sobbing and
Mhm.
screaming and having nightmares, and my body would have somatic, like the tortures and the things would like literally come out of my
Mhm. Mhm.
flesh,
Mhm.
and it was so difficult. It was the most difficult thing I did besides survive my childhood. And yet it broke my heart open. And then having this baby, having this daughter that was just pure love, and I raised her and loved her and protected her, that just changed me so much for the better. And being married, which a family in my mind was a prison, and then I realized, oh no, it actually gave me a foundation because I'd never had a real family, growing up. And when I look back, and there was just a lot of pain and turbulence during especially the memory work time, but I wouldn't trade that for anything because that made me who I am today. And that both the breaking of the heart and then the daughter that I raised, it like brought my heart back fully,
Yeah.
and I never want to live without it again. So
Yeah. It's like the great Rumi quote, you have to keep breaking your heart so it could open. And I think, what do we learn through pain? What do we learn through suffering? If we welcome it in, and we go through these rites of passage and we have these life experiences, and the somatic piece is a big piece to it, like my foundational knowledge and training was like, oh, very cerebral and psychological and even certain spiritual principles. And, they serve me to a certain degree, but when you realize that the body is the storage vessel for so much of your experience, in this lifetime, it's like this warehouse of memories and, stuck energy and, well, repressed impulses that you couldn't follow through on, all these different things that are there. And then when you start working with it intentionally and deeply, like, it's like that saying, the only way out is through, to some degree. And I'm not saying you have to relive every traumatic experience, but the physiology of it sometimes, needs to play out, needs to come out, whether that's through, the shaking and the trembling and the weeping and the heaving and all these different things that happen. So, I met my first mentor in kind of body work, somatic work, over a decade, like a decade ago. He was an ex-Navy SEAL, trained in traditional Chinese medicine, and we went through these like 5-day intensives of just doing this work all day, all night. I mean, it was intense. Now, I don't recommend that for everyone. I think you need to have a little bit of a baseline in terms of capacity within your nervous system for some of this deeper work. But, that changed the game for me. And that was like some of that work I kind of related to um like Jedi training, like your
yeah,
your entire your worldview, the way you perceive your environment, the way you feel in your body completely changes. The way you take in information through your senses, like the world shifts and changes when you do this kind of bottom up work. And so yeah, I'm really happy that more people are becoming aware of this kind of work. Now, somatics become a little bit of a buzzword in the personal development sphere, but still, it's we're moving more towards integration, and we're seeing the impact that it's having. I know you've gone down this road for a long time with the work that you do, and it's imperative, especially when you're dealing with a lot of childhood trauma and abuse. Things
Yeah.
can't just be talk therapy, in my opinion.
No, no. And the subconscious is the body. So,
Yeah.
and that's really what drives everything. It's not the conscious mind. So you really, and in our society, our body, we're numbed by in so many ways, probably on purpose. But,
Yeah.
here's an interesting little piece that really illustrates what you're saying. When when I was a teenager, because of the trafficking, I was impregnated a couple of times. And there was a big ritualized forced abortion when I was almost at term one time. And I repressed that completely because it was too horrific to carry. So I didn't remember that when I was pregnant with my daughter. And when I went to give birth, for no apparent reason, I was fully dilated. It was 26 hours later. I had been pushing for 4 hours. And Joel, you know how long that is for pushing.
Yep.
And she wouldn't come out. And they were like, I don't understand why. So I ended up having to have a C-section. And then, I was in the little room with her, and they took her to, where they clean the baby up and do the whatever stuff. And they took her, and I flipped out, and I didn't even know why I was saying this, but I was screaming to my husband, they took her, they're going to kill her. They took her, they're going to kill her. And, he went and got the nurse, and they rushed her back to me, and everyone was like, oh my God, crazy lady. Well, later, a few years later, I remembered that memory. My body didn't want to let her out of fear that she would be killed just like the babies before. I didn't even remember that, but my body remembered it, right? And when they took her away from me for like 20 minutes, I freaked out again. I didn't know why, but that was such a powerful illustration for me of what our body carries, and our mind may not even be at that point connected.
Yeah. I just can't fathom that I'm sitting here talking to an individual who's experienced that. Like, it's you had a full term pregnancy and that was then taken away from you, and the most horrific thing fucking possible was like, I can't. It's yeah.
But you know what? I got that baby. I
Yeah.
have my daughter now, and we
Yeah.
are so close. It's the most beautiful relationship of my life.
Yeah.
And
I believe
everything
that.
and everything I went through gave me a strength that I have, and that's
Hmm.
mine to keep. And an understanding. I mean, I can help other people that went through similar things, because when you've been there and you've gone there, you have this experiential knowledge of it. So I'm able to help so many people now because of what I went through.
Yeah.
And I suspect, on some level, I really believe I chose the life that I chose, coming in
Yeah.
as a soul. When you're not in here in the human experience, because I have memory of that, it doesn't feel the same. You're like, oh, this is a good idea. I'll do this. It's like, and then when you're in it, you're like, oh shit, this is what was I
Yeah.
thinking?
Yeah.
But how I can now expose something that needs to change on this planet, what's happening to children still today, but I wouldn't be able to expose it if I hadn't been through it. It's like getting a black belt in something, and being and carrying that in you. So, it's all good. Today it's all good. And anyway, I didn't mean to digress onto that, but
No,
so
No.
well,
but I think that
you bring up a good point, and you bring up something that Joel and I talk about, and is actually things that we share with the people that take our program, is that, like, what is the hero's journey? It's like you go on this path, you go through what you go through, but that's not just enough. What do you bring back into the world? What is the boon that you bring back? Very often your greatest wound is your best teaching and your best healing. And so, I want to learn from people that have gone through this shit, and then not people that are just teaching things from a hypothetical standpoint or a conceptual standpoint. It's like, no, what paths have you overcome? What obstacles have you had to push through? And so, like, I mean, talk about the strength that you have. I mean, you have my respect, but what you shared on our podcast and what you've been through, and it's just like, it just goes to show, here you are now, as you shared, starting to speak out more the last, few
Yeah.
years, and the impact that you can have because you've been there, because you've grown from it, you've built self-esteem, you've built strength. What a gift that is. So I think for each person watching this, like, look at your journey as a gift. There's a reframe that needs to happen.
Yes,
Yeah, sure, you can stay in victim mindset. Oh, these things happened to me. They didn't happen to all these other people. I mean, ultimately, you don't fucking know what people are going through and
right.
what they've gone through. So many people project their images, but you have to look in the mirror for yourself and go, well, what have I been through? What can I learn from this? What can I bring back into the world? Because
Yeah.
there are many, many people that have gone through similar things as you. I'm not saying as you, but I mean, there are as you. There are people that have
Yeah,
gone through what you've gone through, but we've gone
yeah,
through what I've gone through, what Joel gone through, these rites of passage. And so the opportunity to share and give your gift and tell your story and support people is there.
Yeah. And I mean, if you can look in the mirror and be with yourself and you genuinely like who you are now, how can you have any regrets?
yeah,
How can you say one thing
Yeah.
happened that shouldn't have happened?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
And that's something that I've said often to people, because they'll be like, do you have any regrets? Well, I'm sitting here right now with Joel, a brother, speaking to you on this platform. There's a lot of blessings in my life. So, like, if I were to change something in my past, would I be here right now?
no,
So it's like, how do you love the journey? The ups and the downs, the ins and the outs, the pains and the struggles, the joys. And I think this is why I think it's so important to go into the body, to feel your feelings, to feel your pain, because to the degree I think that you can feel the depth and the darkness and the despair, you can then feel the absolute joy
yeah,
and pleasure and the miracles of life. And like Joel was saying too, like, to just see a bird, to like gain a scent walking through a meadow, like, and for that to fill you up with joy. And so I think there is this dance between opposites that
Yeah.
exists within us. It's part of human nature. And so this aversion to pain is so many people's downfall,
Mhm.
where if you
yeah,
were just to lean into it and build the capacity to feel it, what's on the other side?
Yeah.
And very often what's on the other side is something more beautiful than you can imagine.
Yeah.
yeah,
No tree can grow to heaven unless it has roots in hell. Carl Jung.
yeah. And if you're right, if you shut off certain feelings, you're shut off all the feelings. And I think, like, the other day I was coming back from the gym and I saw this homeless lady with her shopping cart in a median next to a freeway, and I started crying because it broke me a little bit to see her there. But then I told myself, but thank God you can feel
Yeah.
and you have a heart. And actually, it's appropriate to cry right now and to feel for her. And then I just said, Creator, like, help this woman. Like, could we get to a point on this planet where there is not that we don't see that anymore? You know, but I'm glad that I feel, because if I didn't, I'd be one of the psychopaths that is running this world and has created this hell on earth reality. So we have to feel. That's who we truly, truly are. And that's what's going to change things, is that open heart and that and love, you
Yeah.
know, like, we can't just ignore what's going on.
Grief is such a powerful teacher. It's such a powerful teacher and guide. Last November, my wife experienced a miscarriage of a baby that we were expecting. And the baby had passed. She was experiencing symptoms. We decided to go the no ultrasound route, but when she was having these symptoms that we couldn't ignore, we decided to go get an ultrasound. And so we saw the baby for the first time sitting in there with the doctor, excited and giddy to see the baby. And then, a few awkward silences later, then the doctor tells us that the baby is not alive. And so the baby wasn't born yet, but my wife, being the woman that she is, she carried this baby for 3 months after it had already passed, in order for it to still birth naturally. Despite all the projection, so much risk of infection, risk of septic, this, that, there's no information about doing a miscarriage naturally. But she held firm to that. And doing it organically the way that we did and she did, that allowed the grief to be processed for the correct amount of time and for
Yeah.
it to teach us and to break us open and to make our relationship stronger and to give us even more gratitude for the children that we do have. But I consider miscarriage to be a microcosm of what you just discussed, because so many people have this experience. They'll have a miscarriage in the toilet. They don't want to see it. They just flush it. They don't want to experience it. They want to shun away from it immediately. Or they discover it. Then, oh, it needs to be exited from the womb immediately. You know, we can't see that. We can't have that. And there's a disassociation that occurs. And we don't get that beautiful gift and wisdom that comes with that experience that's available to us when we surrender to the grief, when we allow it to guide us, to teach us, to break us open, to deepen us. And really, that's what we're here for. Is we're here to be deeper, to be more whole, not to be more perfect and one seasoned. You know, so it's a widening that takes place. And you mentioned before about your baby, and like I don't believe that these babies actually leave us. I don't believe they do. I believe they come back when they're ready. And like as it currently stands, my wife is having these weird extrasensory experiences of a baby talking to her, wanting to come back in. You know, so there's just so much magic and a mystical nature to this reality that is so much more than what we know and just the rigid, fragmented idea of life that we've been sold.
Well,
Yeah.
we've become conditioned to live more out of the left brain. You know, we've
Yeah.
lost the connection to the right brain and the empathy and seeing the mystical nature and the bigger picture as opposed to just being short-sighted and going from one thing to the next thing. And I think that's where you know we're a little lost too. And we see it. We see it in institutions. We see it in education. We see it in this you know reductive, materialistic, scientific model.
Mhm.
So, you know, again, this is where it comes down to the individual though to go on their personal journey and to do their inner work and to go, how can I become more whole? How can I, you know, look into my past? How can I expand capacity within my nervous system? How can I really understand who I am and get closer towards feeling the truth of who I am and feeling the depth of who I am and all of it too, you know?
Yeah.
Life isn't about just like you said, Joel, it's not just about like, oh, I need to be positive and happy and spiritual all the time. Like, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's fake. The New Age program is it's designed like all of them. It has a lot of truth, but it's got satanic principles like, oh, everything is love and light and unicorns and butterflies. Evil, it doesn't really don't focus on it. Well, that's convenient for the evil that's trying to take over the planet, you know.
Mhm.
And this idea that, well, there is no moral truth. Yes, there is, you know, yeah, there absolutely is. So it is to deviate us away, but you know, Joel, I want to say something to, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing that story, you know, that painful story of the miscarriage, because you also experienced the miscarriage, you know,
Yeah.
that's your child too. And I know someone who she had several kids and then she was pregnant and they told her early on that the baby had some syndrome, I don't remember what it was, that after birth, they would not survive more than a few hours. And they told her to abort the baby because it wasn't going to survive. And she refused. And
Mhm.
she carried that baby to term, birthed it, and held it for those hours until it passed away. So, and I mean, I found that story so powerful and moving. But she said that was my child, and I was going to meet him
Yeah.
and be with him as he passed, not have some piece of metal inside my vagina ripping him out, you know, like I
Yeah,
was gonna,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, and regardless of how short the experience is from the time perspective, like she's still the mother and she still mothered that child, and that child
yes,
still had the journey it needed to go through in an authentic, real, and organic way, you know, and she wasn't robbed of that, and the child wasn't robbed of that.
right, right. And
Yeah.
we're souls, you know, we're souls in a human body. And myself, I've had what you would call an NDE, you know, several times in my childhood where I was killed or, you know, and I left my body and I could see things. And that experience taught me that we're consciousness because I was never not me. I was just either in or out of my body. And so that's another thing that we're really mistaught is this life and death thing. You know, in Western culture, we don't even deal with death. It's sanitized, it's put away somewhere in a hospital or in a corner. But actually, there's no such thing. Like, we don't actually ever die or end in the way that we're taught. It's just a flow of life from being in form in a body to not. And I agree, like, you can communicate with those beings when they're, and they do often come back. I think the two that were taken from me came back as my daughter today. I'm sure of it, you know. And so, Yerasimos, I hope it's okay to ask you this, but I know that your dad died recently. And, you know, so I was wondering if you feel comfortable, if you would speak a little bit about that experience and what was, you know, how has that changed you, and what has that given you? Because I'm sure it's also given you some gifts, right?
Well, interesting you asked me that in that moment. I was thinking about him. So, yeah, you know, it's been a weird, beautiful, painful, celebratory experience. I mean, I think this is the thing again, like my view of human nature and being a human being. There's so many parts of us that can think different things about a single event, for instance. And so,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
my dad passing, I mean, yeah, it's painful. This is my dad. He's had a huge presence in my life. You know, I mean, he's a big reason I am who I am, you know, along with my mother, you know, and I'm very grateful, you know, I had loving parents, you know, sure they weren't perfect, whatever that even means, you know, but they they played a huge role in my dad too, you know, like they don't make people like my dad anymore. Born in 1930, started working at 6 years old, you know, no education, worked until he was 80 years old, sold his business, like worked 7 days a week. You know, I never heard my dad complain about anything physical in my entire life until he was like 91 years old. Oh, my knee hurts. You know, so again, there's something to say about that resilience that I think like people in the old country and previous generations inherently had, that I think like we've gone to the opposite end of the spectrum now. Like,
And
oh my God, you posted something on Facebook. My feelings hurt, you're canceled. You know, so like it's just
sorry.
kind of wild. But yeah, so you know, listen, my dad, I couldn't have asked for anything more in terms of his passing. The only thing I would have loved to have been there would be holding his hand as he, you know, took his last breath. But my mother was there, and his dog, he loved his Pomeranian, Jack, was there, and he went out on his own terms. You know, like he pretty much knew that moment was going to happen. Told my mom, like he went to the window to get some fresh air and yelled out some Greek prayers and walked back into the room and told my mom, I think this is it, obviously in Greek. And then he kind of stumbled over a bit, and my mom kind of helped him up to the couch, sat with him for 5 minutes, and then he just left. And like, I mean, to be almost 94 years old, to live this full life, to still be there pretty much cognitively and physically, and then it's time to go. And for me, it's sad. For me, I'm also grateful too, because you know, like he lived a good life. And it's still a little surreal also. Like I think you know, when I found out, you know, my mom called me. It was really late at night in LA, like 11:30 p.m. on the 26th of February, and I flew on the 7 o'clock flight the next day. Got home. My brother got in later that night, and it was like go time. You know, my mom's English isn't great. Like me and my brother, we handled things like everything was sorted out with the funeral home, and this and that, and so there was this element of handling things that needed to be handled. Okay, I'm not going to just sit there and weep for a week in a bedroom and just wallow in my sadness. Like it was like, okay, I could find my moments to mourn, to think about my father, and at the same time, there's things that needed to happen. There's definitely been some moments since I've been back in Los Angeles. You know, right when I got back, I started waking up and going for a sunrise walk. And I felt like, especially that first week before things got crazy and I didn't get a chance to keep doing them, um, I felt like a deep connection to my dad. And to be by myself, you know, overlook into Topanga, like overlooking like the Santa Monica Mountains at the sunrise coming up, and to just be able to break down and weep and have, you know, time for these feelings to come out, you know, because you know it's easy to shut them down. Oh shit, I got work to do. I got things I need to sort out, and yet there's also these other parts of me, like my inner child. Like I miss my dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm never gonna smell him again. Like when I hug
Mhm.
him or kiss his bald forehead, I'm never gonna do that again.
Yeah.
So like those are the things that I miss. And even my mom, like she's alone right now, but she's also a badass and she's fierce. And I think for her, even though she may not admit it, there's probably some relief for her too, because the last few years it's been hard for her as he's gotten a little older and he became a little bit more curmudgeon-y, and she's like a dutiful Greek wife and but also fierce. Like it's tough. So like anyways, we're flying back tomorrow. The Greeks do like a 40-day or within 40-day memorial service at the church service. So looking forward to being back. But I think like grief is a weird thing, and it comes and it goes because you never know when. I mean, just think about your day-to-day life. The random thoughts and the random images just come. Like, how many of us are just going through our day and then like some random image of a person we went to like junior high school just pops into our head and we're like, where did that come from? And so even with grief, like I'll just be doing my thing and then something may remind me of my dad,
Yeah.
and like I have a moment and
Yeah.
of sadness or sweetness or happiness. And it, I think all in all, and we did an episode right after this happened where Joel and I talked about, well, obviously my dad had recently just passed and Joel and Alyssa had gone through what they gone through. So our episode was called Life, Death, and Purpose. And I think what all of this brings up for me is this concept of memento mori, which is remember you will die, at least in this. I know, our soul goes on, but in this incarnation. So you have this life. Okay. All we really know right now, like we're in this life, we're in this body right now. It's going to end. Don't shy away from that. Go towards that, knowing that this life will end. And what do you do with it? This miracle of existence, this incarnation of life. Like, what are you doing with it? Are you living your truth? Are you giving your power away? Are you doing what mommy and daddy want you to do, even though deep down inside you're like, I don't want to fucking do this shit. There's a path that's there for me. I don't want this path, this career, this relationship, these friends, whatever that is. And so like knowing that death can come at any moment. Like even this, I could walk out the door right now and get hit by a fucking garbage truck. And so how present and how real can I be in this moment? How much filled with gratitude can I be that like I know you, Max, like we met recently. I know you. I learned about your story, about the experiences that you went through and who you've become, and Joel, my brother, like to really be in this moment and to have gratitude for it because it can go like that. And I think that's what death teaches, well, me, I think us, and more personally speaking, losing a father, like that's a rite of passage in its own. Like I don't have daddy there. I don't have my dad there anymore. Like, what does that mean? How do I step more into my power, into my manhood, into my masculinity? And how do I become a better husband? How do I become a better friend, a better coworker? Like it's not perfect. I ebb and flow. There's times where I'm like, oh, I feel like a lazy piece of shit. But just that awareness and that knowing that I had this experience, that it was beautiful, it was sad, it was weird, and keep it close. I don't want to drink the pain away. I don't want to distract the pain away. I want to be present to it because then again, I can feel the joy, the gratitude, and the beauty of life.
Yeah, and thank you for I almost cried myself because I could see you. And so thank you for showing that a man can feel too, because the masculinity has been so distorted and now there's this war against the man, particularly if you're so-called white, whatever that is. So thank you for embodying all of that emotion and sharing your experience the way that you did, because I think that it's important, and I think all of us are important, and men are so important to this process too. So I really value what you guys bring to the table. And I just wanted to say something about the immigrant background. I mean, in my case, my Sicilian grandfather, he was born in 1899. He was in World War I and II. He died in 2003 when he was 104.
Whoa.
He was totally lucid. He was writing a book. he would go out every day in Rome and buy the newspaper and the fresh bread and everything. And, of course, he grew up in a time when he was never vaccinated, never took pharmaceuticals, ate healthy food. He even told me that when he was 18, he was the head of a troop in World War I, and he couldn't grow facial hair yet, so he took up smoking to appear older. And when he was 50, he realized, oh, actually, I don't need to keep smoking. I'm 50, so he quit. And so it's that, and my grandmother, who he married, he joined the Italian Foreign Service, but before that he was a journalist, and he went to Chile, and he met this woman from a high privileged family, and she was very, very stubborn. Her family was like, you are not marrying that poor Sicilian, and she did, and so it kind of reminds me of your mom, Yerasimos, like she was tough as nails. She told a story of, that they lived in Sicily originally, and women weren't supposed to go out without their husband. But one of her children was sick, so she went to the pharmacy, and she was like, F this, I'm going to go and get the meds that I need, for my child. And so, and then I've had this experience where my mother was born in Egypt. She got married in Libya. My dad grew up, so she grew up Foreign Service child. My dad's American, but actually his mom is half Puerto Rican, and his dad was American Foreign Service, so he grew up all around. He was born in Italy, even though he's not Italian. They met and got married in Libya. I grew up in a whole bunch of countries myself. I grew up in Chile, in Lesotho, in Africa, Dominican Republic, Argentina, Italy, my high school years, where I lived there full time. And so and my mom doesn't speak much English. They spoke Spanish together. He spoke English to us. She spoke Italian to us. So you grow up in this way. And I lived. So I think one thing that gives us in common, it breaks a patterning, because a lot of people, they're born and raised with one thing, in one town, in one way, so to have it forms you differently. You see the world through different eyes when you have that kind of internationalness, all these different cultures mixing in. I think that's a really cool, like that's part of my experience that I really value.
For sure.
I agree.
For
You just
sure.
grieving growing up, it's it's like the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Like I still remember like my mom would put in my lunchbox like all these little Greek foods, and when I was a kid I didn't appreciate it as much. I'm like, I want the Twinkie, I want like the American sandwich or something. I'm trying to like trade my like spanakopita or baklava to like these 7-year-old kids, and they're like, I don't want that. Now I'm like, yeah, that's all I want. Like I don't want your Twinkies or potato chips or whatever that is. So
Yeah, bro.
it's funny.
And
I, lo- I,
and the
lo-
loud mother, like my mother,
yeah.
being Italian, being in a store, she'd be like shrieking my name. I'd be like, I don't know who that lady is, Or the time I hitchhiked as a teenager in Rome, and when I got out of the car, my mom happened to be there. I don't know how that happened. She was on the corner, but she started yelling at me because I had hitchhiked, and all these Italian ladies join in, and they're like all yelling at me, like, it's that culture where
Oh
it's
yeah. I mean, these cultures from that part of the world, like, I mean, I think about my mom, and there's this passion and this intensity, and like, I talk with my hands a lot too, and it's just like, it's like I remember the first time Sophie, tells this story that when we went to Greece for the first time, and we got in really, really late, at like midnight, and then the next morning, we got up late, and my mom and some family members were there visiting. There was like 5 or 6 people, and this is the first time she's visiting my family, and we're at the breakfast table speaking in Greek, being loud, like doing our thing. And Sophie the whole time, she's thinking of huge fights going on,
oh.
and it's because she doesn't understand the language. But like they're like, no, we're just talking about the weather. Like it's just there's just this excitement and this passion, that's just a little different. But yeah, I mean, it's a wild, wild world. My mom's the eldest of her family, and her mother was shot and killed in the fields of Greece, like up in the deep mountains of central Greece when she was 6 years old. So she had to become mother with her aunt to all her younger siblings. And so like that's the primary like archetype that rules my mom, is like the mother archetype, the responsible
Yeah.
mother, the caretaker, etc., which I'm sure Joel maybe,
Oh, it's another massive similarity between us. Like my mom's got two younger brothers, and her dad took the three kids to Australia. You know, she didn't know her mom between the ages of like 6 and kind of 25, kind of thing. So my mom became a mom at 6 years old, raising her brothers, dressing them for school, cooking for her dad and her brothers. You know, it's like it's another thread, man, that weaves us together. My wife's on her mother's side. They're from Calabria, the
Mm.
Calabrese. And yeah, I totally hear you. Like, you know, I was able to, you know, move my family from Australia to Mexico last year, and to be immersed in the Spanish and the Latin culture is a gift for my kids. Like, I love being able to, you know, bring the different parts of the world and different cultures to influence them.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a
And
yeah.
no, go
Yeah.
ahead. You're
Well, I
smart.
would say it's such an education. You think about in the old times, there wasn't these indoctrination camps. Like people read books or not, or they learned through storytelling. They traveled, in the old times, and that's how they learned. And I think it's a different type of education system. And I think there's something to say. Like when I did my backpacking trips, like they changed me.
Mhm.
It changed me, like to be hiking on the Inca Trail and to have the first Kindle available that I bought, because I was traveling in like 2008 and I was reading, and these porters that are carrying 75 pounds of things and not even wearing like the newest like North Face boots or whatever. They're just wearing like these little sandals. They're doing it with a smile, and then they come over to me like over my shoulder holding this electronic piece, like, what the fuck is that? And I'm like, es un libro electrónico, or whatever, electronic book. And they looked at me like, what? And like again, like a moment like that just goes to show you, like, here are these people who, from a certain standpoint have nothing from a material standpoint. Like they're making probably $5 a day, if that. And yet there is this beauty in the looks in their faces, this gratitude, this sweetness, and I'm not saying I want to have that life, but what gift can I take back? What gift can I take back when you go and you interact with these different cultures and these different people around the world that, have this level of gratitude? Very often they don't know what they're missing. Now with globalization, there's a little bit more access, people know, but it's like, can I take that back? Can I take that gratitude, the appreciation of the simplicity, and check myself when I'm freaking out over something? It's like, all right, like I get it. Our problems are relative, like, they probably don't have the same rent that needs to be paid as some people in the West. And, I get it. But we can learn from one another. And I think travel and different cultures and, allow us to just become more empathic and inclusive in the good ways. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, to a degree, the westernization and modernization hasn't done us any favors. The scripted, very sort of vanilla, very same kind of thing that you're supposed to do. And there is a lot to learn. And, I spent some time around 2000, I think it was, in the Amazon jungle in Peru. I was doing my doctorate work in psychology, and I got to that point where I was like, well, this mind only thing is BS. So I just went one summer and lived with this tribe deep, deep, deep in the Amazon. And these people had nothing. I mean, they had one article of clothing each. They had no shoes, they had no electricity, but yet they worked 2 to 3 hours a day, and they built their homes from the materials of the jungle. They slept in hammocks. They had, they would go out and bring back a thing of bananas. They had brought chickens in, and I mean, they worked 2 to 3 hours a day, and the rest of the time they were singing and together. And I observed the grace of their bodies, like the way they moved. They didn't have the stress.
Hmm.
The whole different thing. And I thought, wait a minute, like where I come from, we work 18 hours a day just to have the basics. Like, are they really that primitive? Like, what's going on here? It was really, really, really striking. So
I hear you. Yeah, it's interesting. You think of there are some amazing things of the modern world, and at the same time, there are things that I think cause a lot of humanity to suffer.
yeah. I mean, one of the things I appreciate, even though it can be used for the dark, is technology. Like I can sit here with you guys right now, and we can share, our hearts with each other and have this beautiful conversation, and that wouldn't be possible without this technology. So, which itself is neutral; it can be used for ill or for good.
That's right.
So I appreciate that.
Of
I
course.
appreciate hot showers.
Yeah. And I mean, and what's given rise to all those things, like the technology, the innovation, the hot showers, and the greatest gift that the Western world gave to humanity was the freedom to think. For the first time ever, man's mind was unslaved. It was free to think, free to roam. He didn't have to report to a conqueror, to a priest, to a king, to whatever it might be. And he was free to create. And that's why, since the founding of America, we've seen this crazy boom in innovation, in technology, in production. So many people consider capitalism a dirty word, but they got no idea what capitalism really is. The baseline is simply trading value for value, like being free to be able to exchange, create, and sustain one's own life. And they call that evil, but no, what we see is bureaucracy. We see favors being traded. We see corporatocracy. But the fundamental gift that the West gave us was you were free to think.
So let's kind of wrap up, because we've been talking about an hour and a half, and the modern attention span is not quite there. So kind of to finish, I'd love to hear from you guys. Like, I do think we're entering a new age. If we've been kind of in a dark night of the soul, but then comes the birth canal, right? So what's on the other side? Like, what do you guys envision? How can we make this world of ours kind of serve all of life, and be different than it is now? Like, what's your hope? What's your vision? And what do you think people watching can do also in service of getting us where we want to go?
Okay. Three things cannot remain long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth, said the Buddha. And I think that's just more obvious than ever, right? No one can hide. Anything that's been hidden away, that's been tucked away, any deception, any manipulation that's been undertaken to any degree, on any spectrum, on any level, is being brought to the surface. And so the thing that we all can do is align with the truth. Where even on the most microscopic, minuscule level, where are you deceiving yourself? Where are you lying to yourself? Where are you lying to others? Where do your actions, words, and behaviors not match and not line up? Because right now the truth is that seed that's being birthed through the birth canal, and nothing's going to stop that force. So you either get on the board, you either get on the train, or you're going to get shattered down this path of disintegration and inauthenticity as a result. I know listeners of our podcast, and I'm sure listeners of your podcast understand that very well, but this is something that's rapidly increasing with momentum. We can see it all around us. And, I'm here for the ride, and I'm here for the truth. And I recommend that everyone else do that too.
Yeah, I echo everything that Joel said, and just the reminder too that no one's coming to save you.
Yeah.
Like it's easy to want to give your power away. It's easy to want to stay in a victim mindset, but really, like, we're moving into this time where, you have to be the authority of your life. And I think the more that you recognize that and go inwards and explore the truth of who you are, yeah, like, are you here for the truth? I mean, our podcast, we didn't call it that because we just wanted to, like, learn about all the conspiracies happening in the world. Like, we did it because, there is this internal world within us. And so who are you? Do you really know who you are, what your mission is, what your purpose is, what your gifts are, what you want to bring into this world? And we're moving from this collectivistic or this more tribal way of being to a more individual way. And I don't mean individual in like some negative, like irrationally selfish sense. I mean it in this sense of, hey, I'm going to be who I'm going to be, honor myself, know myself, heal myself, build greater emotional intelligence, build capacity within my nervous system, get clear in what I value and what my gifts are. And then I'm going to honor you for the same reasons. And then we can come together and we can build communities and build collectives as the foundation, as opposed to, no, let's see who has the most power and authority within a collective that then is going to determine what is right for everyone within that collective, be it family, be it culture, be it whatever, a nation. And so I think moving forward, that's what's going to happen. And we see this bifurcation on some level happening in society, where a lot of people are kind of digging their heels in the ground and just kind of like sticking with the old ways and these established paradigms. And then there are groups of people that are curious and going, well, what else? How can I become more free? How can I become healthier? How can I disconnect from this matrix that you spoke about earlier in the episode? And I mean, I think that's the name of the game, is like, build up yourself, gain self-esteem, really, really know and love and honor yourself and be fucking real. It's so easy to bullshit yourself. It's so easy to rationalize and justify, less than ethical behavior. And I'm not sitting here, whoever's listening is being like, oh, I'm this perfect enlightened human being. I'm far from it. But, I'm doing what I can, and I want to keep being better. I want to be a better man, a better teacher, a better leader, a better son. And that's a journey. It is a
Yeah.
journey. And then also this too, like, I know a lot of people use this term awake. Like, I don't really like using that word personally, because it feels like it's an end point. Whereas I think this is an awakening process. And there's many different things to be awake to, especially externally and internally. So, enjoy the journey, Yeah, sure, have a destination in mind, but really enjoy the journey, and put the focus on internally as well. Don't just get caught up with external distractions.
Yeah, you're so much more powerful than you've been programmed to believe. Like you are literally a walking microcosm of the universe. You know, the entire zodiac, all the archetypes, all the constellations, like they exist within you. And you know, when you move, when you decide to act, providence moves as well. You know, that's a great Goethe quote. I truly believe that when you move, God moves. So really get clear. What do you value? What do you want? Where are you fostering inauthenticity, fake relationships in your life? And you know, it's going to be difficult in the beginning, but you know, the ways
Yeah.
through, like Yerasimos mentioned earlier.
And also, like you had mentioned in our podcast with you, the importance of no. Two very important letters in the English language.
Mhm.
Where do you need to say no? Where do you need to set a boundary? Where do you need to be clear with someone or something? Because I think that can propel you to a new stage in your development as an individual, and again, getting clear on what it is. Again, for a lot of people, they may not know exactly what road to take or what they really want, but maybe you can start with what you don't want,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Start there. What do you need to say no to in your life? And then see what comes from that. But this life is such a freaking miracle. Like I keep coming back to this. Like I could lose sight of it on occasion, but like what a gift to be alive. To be in a body, to have these experiences, to experience the ups and the downs, and to build relationships. And I mean, I love it. And so how can you fall in love with life and all of it, not just the
Yeah.
the good stuff?
And don't buy into the bullshit black pill, doom and gloom, prison planet, prison body, everything's a simulation, everything, you know, reincarnation, cycle trap bullshit, you know, like this is magic within and without. There is infinitesimal beauty and power available to you. I mean, just look at the fact that you exist, you know, like what could be greater than that?
yeah. Well, guys, that was like, I got chills just listening to you both. So beautiful. Thank you for saying that. And I will put your links in the description, but just before we jump off, tell people, I think you have an upcoming course very soon, and like, where can people watch your podcast and find you?
Yeah, the podcast is Here for the Truth. We've been booted off YouTube, so it's only available to watch on our website at hereforthetruth.com, but you can listen to it wherever, Spotify, Apple, etc. Rise above the herd, those doors are closed for the meantime. We just launched round nine yesterday. But
Okay.
honestly, we have the most amazing membership community. It's called Friends of the Truth, and it's just a place that I consider to be the ultimate support network. We have in house amazing practitioners and facilitators supporting our members on cutting edge modalities like German new medicine, human design, astrology, nervous system support. People get to connect directly with us. And I think what most people need more than ever really is empowering communities. We're doing 6 calls a month now. And so, if you head to our website, press the coaching offers and membership button, or just go to friendsofthetruth.co, you can learn more about that. And, no one regrets coming into our community. It's just incredible value.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here and for having this chat with me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I love both of you guys. So, let's just keep the door open and do, God knows what work we can do more stuff together. So I look forward to whatever the next thing is.
I agree. Yeah, thank you so much for having us on. For everyone listening, thank you for spending, 90 minutes or so with us. And yeah, let's keep this ride going. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I reflect that back, Max. I love you too, and the door is wide open, and I got no doubt that there's more to come for sure.